a storm now looks possible for Florida next week, with the latest on our Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for June 4th. So around the world right now we have very little active. The only thing that's of any interest to track at the moment is the ex-Typhoon Ewiniar, which is still lingering off the coast of Alaska. But apart from that, there really is nothing in the tropical zones to be talking about at the moment. Things are set to change though in a week or two by the looks of things. It's day 4 of Atlantic hurricane season and we have no areas of interest right now. There's a big convective burst over a disturbance there north of the Greater Antilles, and that's moving off to the northeast out to sea. In the Eastern Pacific, it's day 21 of hurricane season, and there's a few disturbances in there as well in the low latitudes, although still no real signs of development for any of them yet. So we're going to keep watching those, but at the moment, no chances at this time. Western Pacific then looks like this. So there's a few little areas of convection blowing up over the northern Philippines, over Luzon, the southern part of China, including Hainan Island, and a little front moving off through the southern Japanese islands, offshore islands. And this is the Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal, a few storms blowing up there across India, and still quite a lot of monsoonal activity off the coast of Myanmar, which is getting quite a lot of rainfall for the southern part of that country, and that's been a case well publicised for quite a while. And we've dropped the southwest Indian Ocean system, but you can still see it there on the satellite picture, slowly moving towards the west. And honestly, if we look at satellite imagery a little bit later on, you might be able to argue it looks even better now than it did. So with only a Ewiniar to track, well, here it is right now then. Extratropical storm, of course. It's 40 mph winds, pressure of 979 millibars. It's 504 kilometers from Sitka, 547 from Masset in British Columbia, 600 from Ketchikan, 643 from Juneau, and 667 from Prince Rupert, also in Canada, the others there in Alaska. This system will be turning northwards now and then towards the northwest, and it will die off somewhere near Anchorage in a couple of days. Let's check satellite imagery then. First of all, a quick look at Ewiniar, what's left of it. Ex-Typhoon, of course, now it's a extratropical storm, a very large one, no doubt, in the northeast Pacific. Cloud tops aren't very impressive, so it's going to be a system that's dropping very persistent but relatively light rainfall over large parts of the Pacific coast. And this is the Invest in the Southwest Indian Ocean, which got re-tagged Invest 95S earlier. Well, there it is right now, and again, you could argue that it is improving. Convection blowing up, still not sure about a circulation in that, but the thing is, it really doesn't have any time anymore to become a tropical cyclone. It's pretty much done for this system right now. Get a feeling I might eat my words at some point, but there it is, still looking pretty poor by any standard, and I imagine it's not got very much longer. This will be a little bit of a last hurrah for this depression, this area of interest. There's a big blob of cloud tops over the United States right now, over eastern Oklahoma and northeastern Texas, delivering some severe weather at this hour. And looking at the eastern coast, eastern United States to the western Atlantic, showing quite a bit of cloud cover in the area, most of it offshore, and then you've got that system further west, and then you've got that big burst of convection there northeast of the Turks and Caicos Islands, which is moving off out to sea. Like I said yesterday, if it was later in the season, maybe that had a shot of becoming a tropical cyclone, but this one won't. This is the eastern Atlantic off the coast of Africa. Very little going on here, just a few little sort of waves moving off the coast, but we're still in the very primitive stages of this season for that area. This is the eastern Pacific. You can see a few little bursts there of convection, especially that system on the left hand side looks quite interesting, but really nothing becoming a tropical cyclone. And this is the western Pacific, scatty imagery unfortunately, but you can see a big bend of cloud stretching pretty much from southern China through northern Philippines and out towards Japan. And this is the Bay of Bengal, what we can see of it. A big burst of cloud cover there off Myanmar, and some storms blowing up in a line actually across central India. And this is the Arabian Sea, just one or two little blow-ups of convection there, but really very little going on over here, which is pretty normal at this time of year, although of course we can have exceptions. Eastern Pacific still blowing up those sea surface temperatures up to 32 degrees in a few spots now, and extending warm temperatures extending well into the Gulf of California. In the Atlantic, the Gulf Stream is getting more emboldened as well, with a few areas there of 28 degrees Celsius waters. The loop current looking good too into the Gulf of Mexico, 29 to 30 degrees. Off Cuba, that's the hottest spot right now, 30 degrees plus. Western Pacific increasing its temperatures as well, 27 degree temperatures extending to Hong Kong now. Taiwan pretty much completely surrounded by warm enough waters, and off the Philippines, east and west, temperatures up to 32 degrees. Bay of Bengal cooled a little bit since last month because of higher cloud cover. There's still a few spots there of very warm temperatures though, up towards 32 degrees Celsius, and the Arabian Sea also looking good. Southwest Indian Ocean, of course, gradually decreasing over time, but still very warm waters where that area of interest is, if you still want to call it one, 28 to 29 degrees Celsius. Off Australia, temperatures gradually decreasing there as well, but still a few hot spots there. Off the coast of Darwin, up to 29 degrees Celsius in a little area there. And in the South Pacific, those temperatures gradually going off the boil as well. New Caledonia quite far away from the 26 degree isotherm now, and it's slowly stretching further up the islands of Vanuatu. Well, compared to average, the sea surface temperatures look like this. You can still see extremely warm anomalies in the Atlantic, in the central Atlantic particularly. Eastern Pacific has a few hot spots there as well off Mexico, although further out to sea it's not looking as good. Western Pacific also a little bit above average generally, 1 to 2 degrees, a hot area there off Vietnam. Bay of Bengal looking quite good as well. Southwest Indian Ocean still has an anomalous warm area too, if that inverse would continue to track that way. And oceanic heat content is still looking decent for the Eastern Pacific. It might not look like much on this graphic, but it's probably quite a way better than what it was last year at this point. And in the Western Pacific, of course, a massive area of extremely high oceanic heat content, which will highly favour rapid intensification. In the Atlantic, a good area there as well, near Jamaica, extending up to western Cuba and towards the coast of the Yucatan now, and up into the Gulf of Mexico. Good oceanic heat content values there for a long path. If a storm was to track over that area, well, it would have a field day, wouldn't it? Well, let's check the GFS computer model then. In the short range, we're still looking for a potential tropical cyclone to form south of Mexico in the Pacific. You can see a little rotation there starting to form, and then towards the end of day 5 it tries to become a tropical cyclone, ultimately fails by the looks of things there. We've not really seen signals strong enough to call a 10% chance on it yet, but something that bears watching, not just because of what might happen to that, but some of its influence might also affect the Western Atlantic. Rainfall expectations over the next 7 days in this area look like this, and you can see a few areas there of very high rainfall amounts, but later on in the forecast period, this one goes out to 7 days, you'll start to see rainfall increase quite a lot there. There it is over Cuba and getting up towards Florida there in those later parts of that 7-day period, because we are expecting, well, the GFS is expecting a little something to start churning up over there. 15 inches in western Cuba there, that's nearly 400 millimeters, and along the Gulf of Tehuantepec getting up towards 200 millimeters. So in the longer range, what happens? Day 5 to 10, a low pressure system forms off the west coast of Cuba, and then it moves through southern Florida, becomes a tropical storm quite quickly, and then on towards hurricane status after it leaves the coast of Florida, moving northeastwards. We've not tagged it yet because it's still a little bit too far out for our liking. It's just on the 7 to 8 day period, but the GFS and the CMC model are on board with this. But let's not take it for granted. These models can both flip-flop and take this scenario away just as easily as it puts it on the table there. Similarly, in the Western Pacific, the GFS forms another system there, moving up northeastwards, forming just off Taiwan, then moving northeastwards, becoming a brief typhoon, then moving off towards just south of Japan. So almost a mirror image there of two systems doing pretty much the same thing during that time period. That's the second week of June there. Well, fascinating stuff. We'll see what happens. Check out the Force 13 merch store. You can scan the barcode and that will take you straight there, where we have full season and individual storm animations on request, and are still waiting for Hone t-shirt, which is still available because that darn storm is still refusing to form out there in the Central Pacific. So in the Scilly range, day 10 to 16, we are looking once again at the Eastern Pacific. That Atlantic system moves off and turns to an extratropical storm before it reaches Newfoundland. And then in the Eastern Pacific, just another quick flash up there of another tropical cyclone forms very quickly, intensifies very quickly just before it reaches land, and then it gets cut off in its prime, as it were, getting towards hurricane strength in that loop. Yep, and then moves inland and dies off pretty quickly. That's in the Scilly range, very long range there, so I wouldn't take it for granted. That's why we call it the Scilly range. Well, on this day in 2005, the Atlantic hadn't quite started yet, but we did have a very powerful typhoon in the Western Pacific. It was Typhoon Nesat, with a beautiful image there from the International Space Station on this day, June the 4th, 2005. It was near its peak intensity of 145 miles per hour, and it was moving up towards the north at this point, passing the Philippines just to its east. Of course, 2005 would become one of the most powerful and memorable seasons on record in the Atlantic. Westpac, not so much, but it did have a few of its moments as well. Well, let's go back to today then. The first name on the Atlantic naming list this year is Alberto. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aletta, and in the Central Pacific, it's Hone. 20 storms so far this year, and that's the same naming list as 2018. By the way, 2018 Atlantic Hurricane Season Animation version 2 rolls out on Thursday evening. In the Western Pacific, Tropical Storm Gaimi is next up. In the North Indian Ocean, it's Asna. 20 storms so far, as I mentioned. We are 35% below average in terms of accumulated cyclone energy in 2024. Will it catch up? We'll see. Robin is next in the Australian region. Jeremy in the Southwest Indian Ocean if it's this month, otherwise it will roll over to a new list. And in the South Pacific, the next name is Pitta. That's all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.